is that it could potentially wipe us out. But let's start with the upside first.
The upsides are absolutely enormous. The potential uses of this are almost unlimited.
I only discovered AutoGPTs about a week ago and started writing about them. And after I started writing about them, Jeff Bezos followed me on Twitter, and all kinds of crazy amounts of people have been contacting us.
The show where we get you the week's biggest stories from around this world.
Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Here's a quick look at what's lined up for you on the show tonight. Our cover story tonight is about China's new provocative map. That's right, it is an updated standard map that the country has released and has ignited a raging controversy, as it has incorporated Arunachal Pradesh, Aksai Chin, Taiwan and the disputed South China Sea regions. It is an arrogant pursuit to redraw boundaries, and this is the latest episode of China's cartographic aggression that has alarmed the world. The question is this China's deliberate move to sabotage G20 in Delhi? Just have a look at the timing. We piece together the latest reactions and get you the bigger picture. Also on the show for you tonight, a shocking development. A live worm has been found in an Australian woman's brain. We get you the complete story and what the doctors are saying. Why do airlines want to weigh you, and what do you feel about adult-only zones on aircraft? We tell you all that you need to know. We also tell you about the latest round of toxic trends taking over social media platforms and how bizarre and dangerous they are. A former Friends screenwriter's bombshell claims have been making headlines. We get you the complete story. All that shortly. We are starting off the show tonight with some breaking news coming in right this minute. India Space Agency, the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, has just a short while ago issued a statement. This is regarding the Chandrayaan-3 lunar mission that, remember, had successfully made a landing on the lunar South Pole. Now, in the latest that's emerging at this point regarding that lunar mission, ISRO is saying that the Pragyan rover on board the Chandrayaan-3 has unambiguously confirmed the presence of sulfur on the lunar surface near the South Pole. Now, ISRO's announcement signifies a monumental leap in our understanding of the moon's composition, also its geological history, and we will be piecing together what we know at this point and what ISRO is saying. But remember, utilizing the Pragyan rover as part of the Chandrayaan-3 mission, ISRO has embarked on a journey to unravel mysteries hidden beneath the lunar terrain. It's an ambitious mission. The discovery of sulfur, in fact, might just be the first. Let me just quote ISRO's exact statement for you. It came in just moments ago. Laser-induced breakdown spectroscope instrument on board the rover unambiguously confirms the presence of sulfur in the lunar surface near the South Pole through first ever in situ measurements. We will be breaking down all those terms for you and helping you better understand what this discovery really means. And to help us in better understanding the significance of the latest discovery, with us on the broadcast is our correspondent Siddharth MP. Siddharth, thanks very much for being here on the broadcast. You have been closely monitoring every milestone as far as the Chandrayaan-3 mission is concerned. Break down for our viewers what ISRO is saying at this point and what the latest discovery really signifies.
So, hello Molly, let me start by saying that what has happened today is one of the breakthroughs by the laser-induced breakdown spectroscope. So what this does is this is a piece of equipment that is meant to study the composition of the lunar soil. It is meant to study the sort of chemical composition. It's sort of meant to look into the elemental composition. It sort of fires a laser beam. It sort of vaporizes the lunar rock, and then it studies based on the lunar vapor that arises from it, or the vapor from the lunar rock. It analyzes that and then looks into what are the chemicals that are present on the lunar surface. So this is one way of understanding what are the elements available. This is also one way of discovering hydrogen. This is one way of discovering water. So most importantly, hydrogen and water are crucial because for future lunar exploration missions, hydrogen and water, or rather hydrogen and oxygen, are seen as two potential rocket fuels. So we must remember that when water ice is present, water ice can be processed and supercooled to get cryogenic rocket fuels, which is supercooled hydrogen, supercooled oxygen. So if in case there is a future lunar settlement on the moon, the presence of liquid hydrogen and the presence of liquid oxygen, in fact, it will be present as water ice. If they can be processed into super chilled liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen, that is used as a potential rocket fuel. This is one of the major breakthroughs. So ISRO has said that search for hydrogen is underway. Oxygen, of course, as expected, is detected. In addition to this, there are also several metals, or rather several elements, including iron, then there is of course manganese and silica. All of these are detected. There's also aluminum, there's also calcium, iron. All of these are detected on the lunar surface. But the most significant, to tell you, Molly, is the presence of sulfur. Most important aspect about sulfur, we are referring to papers from NASA research from a couple of decades ago. So how do you build something on the moon? If you want to settle down on the moon, how do astronauts build a settlement? Obviously, it's impractical to take all the construction material or, fabricated structures from Earth. It's too expensive. It's impractical. But what do you have to do to be able to construct something on the moon? You need to look for metals and materials that are available that can perhaps help you construct something. So sulfur is one of the key materials according to NASA. So when we look at sulfur and its potential, what it holds in store, so it is said by NASA itself in some of their research papers that the lunar regoliths or the lunar soil and what is available in the lunar soil can be taken. It can be processed along with sulfur. That is, of course, now unambiguously confirmed by Chandrayaan. So sulfur can be mixed with the lunar soil. Some processing can be done on the moon surface itself. And once that process is complete, it's possible to derive sulfur-based bricks using lunar soil. So once that discovery is possible, this is of course theory that we are talking about. So once that is made possible, it is easy to create structures on the lunar surface. You can make bricks and then that will lead to structures, Molly, on the lunar surface.
Right. Stay with me, Siddharth, as we continue to track the latest coming in regarding the Chandrayaan-3 mission. We just put out on our screen the statement that's come in from ISRO. Let's also get in a quick reaction from Dr. Amitabh Ghosh, who's also with us on the broadcast from Washington, D.C. Thanks very much for being here. It is a significant development, as our correspondent was just pointing out. If you can just share with us your initial reaction to what ISRO's latest discovery really means and why this is going to be just the beginning as far as the milestones of Chandrayaan-3 mission are concerned.
So I was hearing the last part of the conversation. I think we need to back up a little bit. So this is laser-induced breakdown spectroscopy. It's there in the two last NASA rovers. And so we work on that. So what is this instrument really measuring? It's not measuring mineralogy. It's measuring the elemental chemistry, which means that, see, you might have sulfur in multifarious mineral forms. So we don't really know what is the exact mineralogy of the sulfur. It can be sulfur dioxide. It can be some other sulfur mineral. We do not really know. And so I would temper the excitement. So not talk about much larger plans of how to build colonies, etc. It's just that you have the first measurement. I'm sure there'll be many more measurements. We need to know in what mineral form the sulfur is.
Right.
And then from there, you can try to see that, well, is it a form which is extractable or not? So it will involve quite a few. And the reason you don't see hydrogen is, remember, there was a crater and the rover drove past the crater because of trafficability issues. So the reason you don't find hydrogen may be that it can be in other elements, compounds as well, but it can also be in water. And that crater might have the ice. But unfortunately, if you get into the crater, you might not be able to climb out. So this is an ongoing process. And one thing you should remember, I don't quite recall off the top of my head, the energy that the daily budget of energy that the rover has is limited. And all these rovers, which are solar powered. So what it can do is also, in terms of driving and analysis, is limited. So it's a very good discovery. Yes, go ahead.
Sure. I just want to understand from you whether or not this is the first time such a discovery has been made, and a lot of curiosity attached to the way in which this mission has been carried out, and how there are still days to go for that rover to send back data, to send back images. So first of all, just share with us the significance of this discovery and whether or not this is the first time it's been made.
See, I don't think this is the first time. I think there are a few kgs, tens of kgs of Apollo samples. When I came here as a grad student, I studied those Apollo samples in thin sections. I don't think this is the first sulfur-based mineral. And we don't know, again, the mineral. It's not the first time sulfur is being found on the moon. And the second thing which you asked is, yes, of course, the mission has been conducted very well. And, you will get many results, but it's all part of a long hike. So all this has to be figured out what it means, right? So for example, temperature profile was very interesting. So we talk about going and settling on the moon, but the temperature on the moon is 70 degrees centigrade. If it's 50 degrees centigrade in I don't know, somewhere on Earth, we are very, very uncomfortable. So there are bits and pieces which will come out, and
Absolutely.
then we have to square together the whole picture.
Right. Dr. Ghosh, quickly before I let you go, if you can just help us understand how exactly these detections really take place and the process that's really followed.
Right. So here okay. For the alpha proton X-ray spectrometer, you take the spectrum, you find you see the spectrum which comes out, and you try to match it with your existing library of spectrums. For the laser, you zap a laser, and then, as your correspondent was explaining, the air around it becomes high temperature, and then the gases, you try to analyze what came out. So these are all spectroscopic methods, and you have to be calibrated, and you need to have calibrated samples in your library, and that's how you match. So it's a fascinating process, takes years though.
Indeed, and we will be keeping a very close watch on the latest coming in from the Indian Space Research Organization. For now, we're leaving it there for the moment, Dr. Ghosh, and also thanking our correspondent Siddharth MP for getting us more on those inputs coming in from ISRO.
Thank you.
Moving on for now, India has lodged a strong protest with China today over a map unveiled by China. In fact, a statement released by the External Affairs Ministry just a few minutes ago reading, and I'm quoting, "We have today lodged a strong protest through diplomatic channels with the Chinese side on the so-called 2023 standard map of China that lays claim to India's territory. We reject these claims as they have no basis. Such steps by the Chinese side only complicate the resolution of the boundary question." Now, if we were to grade China for presumption, arrogance, and an imperial mindset, it would basically receive the highest marks in the world. Not something to be proud of. You see, 1 minute they talk about peace at the border, and the next minute they claim large chunks of territory from their neighbors. And Beijing has yet again shown huge sections of India as part of China. That's right, Beijing is at it again. It's only been days, by the way, since India and China met on the sidelines of the BRICS summit and spoke of a peaceful resolution of the border disputes. The two sides have also met recently for longer talks, and today China has released an updated map that has sparked outrage in India and deep worry in Taiwan and the Philippines. What's wrong with the map, you ask? Well, it includes Indian territories of Arunachal Pradesh and Aksai Chin within China. It also incorporates Taiwan and the disputed South China Sea regions. The updated standard map, as they call it, has once again raised the prospect of Chinese aggression. Remember, only a few weeks ago, President Xi Jinping asked his country's military to be ready to fight on both the waves and mountains. The official map was released today by China's Ministry of Natural Resources on its website. And the explanation was they forgot to mention that these arbitrary claims also inflame tensions with the neighbors and threaten war. India can never forget China's aggression in 1962 to change the line of actual control. And that was not the only bit of Chinese aggression in the 1960s, of course. In 1969, China invaded Russia to take Outer Manchuria and parts of Siberia. And according to the state-run Global Times, the present map has been compiled based on the drawing method of the national boundaries of China and various countries. That is aggressive nonsense. Because if that were the case, why has it ignored India's position on Arunachal Pradesh? China calls the northeastern state of Arunachal Pradesh South Tibet. And India has repeatedly reminded China that Arunachal Pradesh has always been and will always be an integral part of India. And this is not the first time China has tried to falsely claim Indian territory. In the year 2012, China showed Arunachal Pradesh and Aksai Chin as its territory in their e-passports. In the year 2014, the Chinese map claimed Arunachal Pradesh as its own, provoking India. And then, in 2015, China greeted Prime Minister Modi with a wrong map of India, one in which Kashmir and Arunachal Pradesh were missing. And in the year 2019, China destroyed at least 30,000 world maps because they showed Arunachal Pradesh as Indian territory. In the year 2020, new Chinese digital maps claimed parts of Arunachal Pradesh. And then in April this year, China renamed 11 places in Arunachal Pradesh. Of course, India rejected these unilateral attempts at expansionism. But let's be serious and call a spade a spade. The map is a brazen provocation, claiming Indian territory as its own, the sheer audacity of it all. But you see, China's map's ambit goes beyond India's borders. Its hawkish claims over Taiwan and the islands in the South China Sea have become a matter of global concern since they could set off a multi-nation war that would include America and Japan in Taiwan's support. China's pursuit of integrating these islands into its fold aligns with President Xi Jinping's agenda. China's delineation includes the controversial 9-dash line, asserting a substantial portion of the South China Sea as Chinese territory. And so China's arrogance is met with massive outrage from Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, Taiwan. And therefore, the latest development is not new. In fact, it's very much in character for Beijing. China uses maps to lay down markers, but the map is the only beginning, an omen for future war. And that is why it's worrisome to say the least. The new Chinese map comes just a few days after Prime Minister Modi met the Chinese President Xi Jinping. The two leaders had discussed de-escalation of tensions at the border, and the talks were much needed as ties have worsened over the last 3 years. And during their talks, Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping talked about resolving the issues and maintaining dialogue through military and diplomatic channels. But you see, these talks do not indicate any breakthrough because just have a look at what China is actually doing. It refuses to disengage from eastern Ladakh's Depsang Plains and Charding Ninglong Nula at Demchok. And it will not stop building bunkers, posts, artillery positions near the LAC. It will also not stop developing dual-use villages. And it just will not stop unilaterally renaming Indian territories and redrawing the map. China's aggressive moves show that while it talks peace on the surface, it wants to contain India's rising military power. Prolonging talks is classic China. But India is also aware, India is clear that ties cannot be normal unless there is full disengagement at the borders. Indian concerns with China also do not stop at the boundary issue, of course. China's aggressive actions against India through its neighbors in South Asia are also a matter of deep concern. The Indian leadership is in no mood to yield. Let me just turn to the big question for now. Will China's map provocation become the new flashpoint that turns the coming G20 summit in Delhi into a forum of conflict instead of a forum for peace and progress? We know Xi Jinping is going to attend the upcoming G20 summit. His last visit to India was in 2019 before the Galwan clash. Will India raise the issue of this map with China during the summit? Will China back off during discussions with India? We will have to wait and watch what lies ahead as part of Xi Jinping's inscrutable visit. But let me leave you with something to think about. Did Beijing deliberately publish this map at this time in order to sabotage the harmony of the G20 summit to be held in Delhi? My guess is yes. You see, China does not want the G20 summit in Delhi to succeed, and its games have begun. There is an old saying in Arabic, a house divided cannot stand, is what it means. It will either perish or lie desolated. This adage may be centuries old, but it never fades in relevance. Just have a look at the Arab world. There are over 22 Arab nations with at least 400 million people. They follow the same religion. They share the same sets of beliefs, but they do not get along so well. They are divided in camps. They are mired in conflicts, both internally as well as externally. And tonight, we tell you the story of 3 such Arab nations, 3 countries that are either facing domestic turmoil or an existential crisis. These countries are Syria, Libya, and Lebanon. Let's just take you through the troubles that they are facing one at a time. Let's start off with Libya. It's in the grip of unrest. For the last 2 weeks, there have been a spate of protests and strikes across government-held areas, especially in the province of Soweda. This is one of Syria's 14 governorates. Its inhabitants are mainly the Druze, and they are demonstrating against the government, asking Bashar al-Assad to step down. Have a look at this. So the question is, why are these people protesting? Due to economic mismanagement. Reports say these protests were spurred by a rise in fuel prices and corruption. And they quickly morphed into anti-government demonstrations. The protesters are now also seeking a transitional government and requesting the release of thousands of Syrians who have been put behind bars. This has never happened before, by the way, at least not in this province. And the fear is these protests could soon spill over to the rest of the country, and we will not be surprised if they actually do. Just have a look at what the numbers tell you. The Syrian pound has sunk to historic lows, Last we checked, it stood at 13,000 against the dollar. The country's 12-year conflict has pushed 90% of its population under the poverty line, and over 50% of its population faces food insecurity. So given the state of affairs, it only seems to be a matter of time before the protests spiral. The second country of concern is Libya. It's in the grip of political turmoil, courtesy a secret meeting. A meeting between Israel's Foreign Minister Eli Cohen and Libya's former Foreign Minister Najla Mangoush. Yes, she no longer holds that post. She has been sacked for secretly meeting Cohen in Rome. Now, in case you're wondering what's the big deal, then you must know this. You see, Libya does not formally recognize Israel. Plus, there is widespread public support across the Libyan political spectrum for the Palestinian cause. So, when the Libyan foreign minister meets her Israeli counterpart, questions are bound to be asked. And why just questions? There are protests as well. Have a look at these visuals. They are from Monday. This is when several Libyan cities witnessed protests over this revelation. Some protesters, in fact, burnt tires, others blocked roads. And to stop the protests from escalating further, the Libyan Prime Minister visited the Palestinian embassy today and reiterated his government's support for the Palestinian cause. But the people say this might be too little and too late. Listen to this.
Of course not. Honestly, we are against normalization. These Jews are our enemies. They displaced the Palestinian people and treat them with no mercy and are not giving them any part of their rights. We condemn this meeting with Israel, especially if the normalization was planned and if this meeting really happened and it is not staged or something, then honestly, this is not acceptable to Libyans.
Country of concern number 3 is Lebanon. It is in the grip of an unending crisis. You see, ever since the 2020 Beirut explosion, Lebanon's economy has been in disarray. Its GDP has been on a downward spiral. The Lebanese pound has lost 90% of its value. Inflation and poverty have only skyrocketed, and most Lebanese are unable to access their savings because of the strict capital controls. And the situation is not improving because of a political deadlock. In fact, last week, the country's Prime Minister urged the fellow parliamentarians to resolve the issues and pass stalled laws. And he went to the extent of telling them to do so for God's sake. Listen to this.
Today we have reached a very difficult stage and our economy is becoming cash-based. And this cash-based economy will expose Lebanon to many risks if a law for a recovery and restructuring of banks is not passed. It is necessary to restore a normal banking life so that we can get out of this crisis. Otherwise we will go from one crisis to another. And the situation is very difficult. Oh God, I have spoken several times and I say it again. I have informed the situation is very difficult. And if we do not reach a solution, let everyone bear the responsibilities.
So you have Syria, you have Libya and Lebanon. All three countries are plagued with crises, and we haven't spoken about other Arab nations that are facing similar issues. The likes of Tunisia, Iraq, Yemen. They are all facing overlapping crises. And how exactly do we perceive this? Is the Arab world going up in flames again? And for our next story, let me just set the scene for you. A 64-year-old woman in Australia makes her way to a hospital. She's been grappling with abdominal pain and diarrhea. And after undergoing a battery of medical tests, her condition does not seem to improve, but rather worsens. And then an astonishing revelation comes to light. The doctors are completely taken aback. What they find is beyond belief. A 3-inch worm, you heard that right, a live worm had taken up residence within that woman's brain. And this marks the first documented case of a live worm found in a human brain. The woman from New South Wales had been admitted to the local hospital in late January 2021. She faced respiratory symptoms. Medical scans revealed abnormalities within her lungs and liver, but her condition only got worse over the months. She would forget things and was feeling depressed. They found the worm in her brain in 2022. It was found on the right frontal lobe of her brain. It was about 80 millimeters long, 1 millimeter in diameter. The 3 inches long worm is called Ophidioceras robertsi, a roundworm that is usually found in pythons. And as mentioned earlier, this is the first time that this parasite has been identified in a human being. Doctors are stunned because it's not meant to develop in a human being. It's meant to develop in small mammals and marsupials. So it turns out that this Australian woman was an accidental host. Basically, they say that the worm made its way through the woman's lungs, her liver, and then her brain. Given that no patient had ever been treated for the parasite, the patient was treated for other larvae that may have invaded other parts of her body. She was thoroughly checked, and she is recovering well and is still being regularly monitored. But it's a case that has baffled medical professionals. They say that the patient resided near a lake that was also home to pythons. And even though she did not come in direct contact with any, the woman often collected native vegetation from near the lake. She would then use this for cooking, and doctors believe she may have unknowingly consumed the python's eggs due to contamination. These larvae are known to survive for a long time in animal hosts, and now researchers are worried that more such cases may pop up. Researchers are still exploring whether a pre-existing medical condition that caused this particular woman to be infected. According to the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 3/4 of new or emerging infectious diseases in human beings come from animals. This world-first case has highlighted the danger of diseases and infections passing from animals to human beings, especially as people and animals start to live a lot more closely together and habitats continue to overlap. This particular infection does not transmit between people, so this patient's case will not cause a pandemic, of course. But the snake and parasite are found in other parts of the world, so it's likely that other such cases might surface in the coming years in other places. According to the Australian National University, 30 new types of infections have appeared in the last 30 years. 3/4 are zoonotic, basically diseases that have jumped from animals to human beings. And what this tells us is that as the human population grows and as we continue to encroach on animal habitats, the rate of animal to human diseases also surges. It's an issue that we see time and again, whether it's Nipah virus or coronavirus like SARS or MERS. It has become increasingly important for the experts and for the governments to take note. It's become important for them to ensure surveillance, and it has become important for us to be aware. What's that one thing that most of us are afraid of when taking a flight? Not the fear of a crash. We are talking about excess baggage. We keep the baggage allowance in mind when packing for a vacation, while shopping during the vacation, and also while trying the most of duty-free. What if airlines start weighing more than just your bags? What if they also start weighing you? Welcome to 2023. In May, Air New Zealand announced that it would be asking international passengers to stand on the weighing scale before boarding. Your weight will not be displayed, is what the airline had promised. Even the staff will not be able to see how much the passenger weighs. But what was the point of the exercise then, you wonder? Air New Zealand said the idea was to find the average weight of the passengers. So that was what happened in May. 3 months on, another airline has jumped into this weighty issue. South Korea's largest airline also will now be weighing its passengers. Korean Air saying the exercise will be taking place in front of the boarding gates and it will be applicable to both domestic as well as international passengers. Once again, the reason being given is a passenger weight survey. But here's a question. Why do you think airlines are so obsessed with your weight? Have a look at our next report.
It's not just your weight that airlines are concerned about. It's weight in general. Do you know why? Because the load a plane carries is directly related to its fuel consumption. The heavier your plane, the more fuel it guzzles, even when traveling the same distance. What adds to a plane's weight? Passengers, luggage, crew members, the equipment and the services on board, and the cargo it's carrying. There isn't anything an airline can do about the equipment on board. The cockpit cannot be tampered with. The manuals available for the pilots and cabin crew can't be removed. But what some airlines have started doing now is focusing on the weight of the crew. Have you ever wondered why our cabin crew is mostly female? Because women weigh less than men. Yes, that's one of the reasons why airlines prefer hiring women for the job. Over the years, airlines have taken multiple measures to cut down on weight. Remember the golden times of flying when you would be served in fine china irrespective of which class you were traveling in? Passengers in economy too would get steel cutlery. Why do you think that stopped? Not because people were stealing the knives and forks, not just because plastic or wooden spoons are cheaper. Airlines realized they can save weight by replacing fine china with foils, plastic wraps and disposable cutlery. Airlines realized the weight they save by rationalizing on your in-flight dining experience can save fuel cost. The saved weight can also be separately sold to freight companies for cargo. You see, airlines are in the business of weight. And when you're operating thousands of flights a day, even a single gram of weight per flight matters. In 2019, Finnair was carrying around 50 kilograms of print products in its narrow-bodied aircraft, around 125 kilograms in its wide-bodied planes. That year, the print products alone cost Finnair 473 tons of fuel. This was around 0.04% of its total fuel consumption. In 2021, the airline decided to do away with in-flight magazines. In 2018, United Airlines said it is now printing its in-flight magazine on lighter paper, cutting 1 ounce from each magazine. This 1 ounce from each magazine on each flight is estimated to have saved the airline $290,000 on annual fuel costs. Today, it's rare to find magazines in your seat pocket, and now you know why. Because over the years, your flight experience has been reshaped, keeping fuel efficiency in mind. The onboard sale of products have disappeared. Children are rarely handed bags filled with workbooks and crayons. Your planes no longer have curtains. Every piece of extra baggage is now charged. A 2017 survey of American Airlines found that every laptop increases the airline's operating cost by 33 cents per flight. Every pillow adds 6 cents. Every magazine a passenger brings along costs 5 cents. What about all the extra weight a passenger carries? In 2012, an average passenger weighed 73.2 kilograms. When flying from London's Heathrow Airport to Ireland's Dublin Airport, every passenger with the average weight contributed 16.85 kilograms to fuel consumption. But a passenger who weighed 117 kilograms consumed 27 kilograms of fuel. Passengers have become heavier since, courtesy rising obesity. Airlines fear the pandemic may have only added to the weight and their worries. This is where your weight checks come in. Chances are it won't stop with Air New Zealand and Korean Air. So the next time you're boarding, don't be surprised if a ground staff asks you to wait, please. Happy landings. WION World is One.
Well, excess baggage is a big worry. You know what else is? Crying kids. No matter how adorable they are, when children throw a fit on a flight, you know your journey has gone for a ride. There will not be any sleep or the chance of getting any work done. If you are lucky, the crying stops some minutes into the flight. But what do you do if right behind you is a child who will just not stop kicking your seat? He is crying for attention. His parents are not bothered. The child's mother then pulls out a cell phone or a tablet and starts playing rhymes or cartoons out loud. You can hear the rhymes, and so can the passengers in the row in front of you. And if the noise is not bad enough, the restless child starts kicking your seat again. Just this thought is enough to trigger a headache. Now here's a thought that may help relieve the headache. An adult-only zone on the plane. Korean Airlines is testing designated seating arrangements where a portion of the plane is reserved for those aged 16 and above. And the adults-only zone will be separated from the rest of the flight by a wall or curtains. And this way, travelers will be able to work or sleep or enjoy a movie without the crying. Obviously, this decibel relief comes at a cost. The pilot project is expected to start off in November. Do you think more airlines should follow suit? Scoot reportedly has a similar model. Perhaps more carriers should, because let me tell you what, an adults-only zone is not just helpful for passengers traveling without children, but also for those traveling with infants or young children. And let's face it, flights are not easy for mothers either. First, no mother or father likes the thought of their child becoming a nuisance for others. There is a guilt factor. A parent traveling along with a child often requires support. It could be something as simple as holding a bag for a few seconds as she tries getting her child to eat. Sometimes co-passengers refuse to cooperate as well. When a passenger is choosing to share a row with the traveling parents, one can hope he or she will be more sporty when it comes to helping out the parents. And children also will be able to interact with others of their age. In short, it's a win-win for all. Our next story is from Kota. What do you know about this city? It is India's coaching district, a hotspot of aspiring engineers and doctors. But recently, unfortunately, it has become a hotspot of suicides. On Sunday alone, 2 students died by suicide in a span of 4 hours. One jumped off his coaching institute's building. His name was Avishkar Shambhaji Kasle. He was all of 16 years old. Another hanged himself at his rented apartment. His name was Adarsh Raj. Adarsh was only 18 years old. India's coaching district is riddled with a spate of suicides. There in fact have been 23 already this year. 23. So what is Kota doing about this is the immediate question. The district administration has halted tests and examinations at coaching centers for the next 2 months. And it's also trying to make student hostels and paying guest areas suicide-proof. How so? By installing spring-loaded fans so that the students don't end up hanging themselves to death. Balconies are being covered with anti-suicide nets so that the students don't jump off. What's next? Will the hostel wardens also start confiscating sharp objects from students? Is there any limit to this? Why not suicide-proof the system instead? Have a look at the numbers yourself. They are harrowing to say the least. It's just August and there are 4 months left in this year. Like I said, 23 students have died by suicide already. Last year, the figure stood at 15. A year before that, 9. The number of suicides had declined during the COVID-19 pandemic, but since then it has shot up by 60%. In fact, in the year 2018, there were 12 suicides. In 2017, there were 10. And as you can see, save for the pandemic years, the numbers have only grown. The question is, who is to be blamed? You see, often parents become the scapegoat, as if losing a child is not enough already. They have to live with the guilt of grinding their children too hard. But is it really their fault? Just look around you. Have a look at the society we are living in. The harsh reality is India only celebrates certain kind of professions. If you aren't a doctor or an engineer or don't land a government job, if you don't clear an entrance examination or perhaps score 90% in your board exams, your career is considered to be practically over. So when parents ask their children to perform, to score well, to get into the best college, it comes from a good place. We can blame the parents, we can hold the teachers accountable, we can also point fingers at the coaching centers that capitalize on the students' dreams. But are they really the villains in this story? Or is the villain this deep-rooted mindset that your mark sheet defines you? Think about it. Think of all those days you were in high school yourself. What was it like? Wasn't a majority of curriculum based on cramming facts, memorizing formulas, principles that you rarely use now as a part of your day-to-day lives? And yet those who scored well moved on to prestigious colleges and landed well-paying jobs. But what about innovation? What about application-based learning? Is the practice of rote learning even working out for India? Or is it putting unnecessary pressure on the students? Let's have a look at some more numbers. Take the example of India's most prestigious engineering institute, the Indian Institute of Technology, IIT. There are 23 IITs across India. In all, there are only 17,385 seats. More than 1,113,000 students registered for the JEE mains exam. Can you see how fierce the competition really is? Some 17,000 seats against over 1 million students. And last year, there were 16,598 seats in IITs. Over 1,026,000 students registered for the JEE mains. You see, the admission slots increased by only 1,000 in a year, but the number of aspirants grew a lot more. The seats in IITs remain somewhat limited, and every year, more students dream of grabbing those same seats. More and more end up enrolling themselves in coaching centers, not just in Kota, but across India, with every parent dreaming that there is scope for their child to get in. I don't mean to demotivate you, of course. Those who really want to become an engineer or a doctor, by all means do it. Take coaching, take tuition, study hard. But our hearts go out to those who are just doing it to make their parents proud, or to land a job that is socially acceptable in India. Also, for those who are crumbling under the pressure to excel, please remember your life is worth more than any entrance examination, and your mark sheet does not define your future or your merit. Our next story is about an accidental prime minister, someone who was handed the reins of his country temporarily, but could soon end up becoming a termless head of government. I'm talking about Anwar-ul-Haq Kakar, the interim prime minister of Pakistan, a man they say has been installed by the army into power. He was appointed to the post on the 14th of August. The aim essentially was to make himself on the post for 90 days, after which the country will be heading to polls. It's only been 2 weeks, and there are already murmurs that Kakar may rule for longer. Some of them, in fact, have been triggered by this decision, the decision to delay the general elections. It's been taken by Pakistan's Election Commission. Why, you ask? so that it can conduct a fresh delimitation of the constituencies on the basis of a new consensus, or of a new census. According to the schedule announced by the ECP, the delimitation would be completed on the 14th of December, and this date is beyond the 90-day period required to hold polls after the dissolution of the assembly. Earlier, the elections would have been held by the 9th of November, and now they could get delayed by a couple of months more. Imran Khan's party, the PTI, has moved to the Supreme Court protesting against this decision. Some PTI supporters are also saying that this was all planned, that it was always the establishment's intention to not hold the polls on time. Interestingly enough, the PTI is not the only party that feels this. Some in the Pakistan People's Party also share that sentiment, and they are pushing for timely general elections. They say any delay is unacceptable. And that's one reason why some believe Kakar should stay in power for longer. Another reason is this: Nawaz Sharif's decision to not return to Pakistan. That's right. After months of will he, won't he, the PMLN Supremo has reportedly confirmed that he is not coming back anytime soon. And the revelation was made by senior PPP leader Khurshid Shah. He says the former Pakistani Prime Minister is not in good health and might not come as his health could worsen further. But is his health the only reason here? It seems to be, although some say that this could also be due to some alleged differences that have emerged within the Sharif brothers. This claim is yet to be verified. In any case, if Nawaz Sharif does not return, then who is going to contest the elections from the PMLN? Last we checked, his brother Shehbaz Sharif was telling the people that Sharif Sr. would be the face of the party. And that plan seems to have gone for a toss. And as for the other contender, Imran Khan Niazi of the PTI, he is still in prison and there is no guarantee if he will get released before elections. Even if he does, we do not know if he will be allowed to contest elections. You see, the ultimate winner in all of this would be Anwar ul Haq Kakar, for the single reason that he gets to rule for longer. Interestingly, it also seems that he's being promoted heavily by the Pakistani media. Even the smallest statements that he makes are featured on front pages. He's also going on his maiden visit to Kenya next month. Clearly, Kakar is cementing his grip on power, or probably he's being made to by the Pakistan army, given its history of installing puppet leaders in Islamabad. Onam, Kerala's popular harvest festival, is here. It's being celebrated with a lot of enthusiasm and splendor. People hold grand processions and boat races and enjoy traditional folk dances such as Kathakali. But why is this festival celebrated in the first place? Well, the story goes like this. In Mahabali's kingdom, everyone was treated equal and all his subjects lived peacefully and prosperously. The Deva king Indra felt threatened by the aura of Mahabali and approached Lord Vishnu to put the king in his place. Lord Vishnu transformed into his fifth incarnation, a small Brahmin boy called Vamana, and approached Mahabali. The king was conducting a ritual. He asked Vamana to choose anything he wanted from his kingdom. Vamana asked for just 3 steps of land. Mahabali happily accepted the request. The dwarf-sized Vamana suddenly grew into the skies. With 1 step, he covered the earth. With the second, he covered the heavens. He asked Mahabali, where should he keep the 3rd step? And with nowhere left, Mahabali offered his head for Vamana to step on. Vamana sent him to the netherworld with his 3rd step. However, Mahabali asked Lord Vishnu to let him visit his subjects once a year. Lord Vishnu granted his wish. The day of Mahabali's annual return to earth is now celebrated as Onam. We're leaving you, as always, with Gravitas images. Thanks very much for watching.
It's easy to tell you a flat story. It's easy to show you what's happening around the world. We do the difficult part.
This weapon has been banned, but the US, Ukraine and Russia do not